sex was the first way I ever learned how to meditate. Drawing my attention, my focal point is what's feeling good. And the more that I immerse in what's feeling good and where it's feeling good and how it's feeling good and how it's moving and transforming, not where is it going, but just studying the pleasure, the
Mhm.
more pleasure that you're going to experience.
I'm Rachel, and you're listening to the Owning Your Sexual Self podcast. All right, everyone, we're back for a round two. We're back to back weeks of Dr. Aly Ash joining us again. So if you listened to last week's podcast, then this is a familiar face and voice for you. But founder of TurnOn Love and a Stanford University lecturer. Today we're talking about a very important topic, anorgasmia. Some of you probably just heard that and you're like, what the hell does that mean? What do I have this? Am I this? Tell us all the things. But thank you, Aly, for coming back on the show today.
It's such a pleasure. I always love chatting with you.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, just some acknowledgement for the orgasm, right? Or lack thereof, essentially, is
Hmm.
addiction today, which we know can carry a lot of emotion, a lot of shame, a lot of pressure for so many people. So yeah, let's open up with what is it? What are we talking about today?
So anorgasmia is difficulty orgasming. Folks with anorgasmia may never orgasm or may just really struggle to orgasm in a way that feels unreliable and frustrating and hard. And there's so many factors that can impact somebody's ability to orgasm. And when we think about even what orgasm is, let's just talk about that for a moment. Orgasm is a full body experience. Your nervous system, your hormones, your emotion, and the context that you're in all play roles. Orgasm is a neurological experience, and so it does have a big brain function and component. Um, Orgasm can feel like contractions in different parts of the body. You can have an orgasm actually anywhere on your body. All your skin is just full of nerve endings. And the way that I really like to think about it is imagine that your nerve pathways are like riverbeds. And the more water that goes along the riverbed, that deeper that nerve pathway becomes. So the more energy, pleasure is energy, sensation, and touch along those nerve endings, the more that route to the pleasure centers of your brain can become more defined. And then that can result in this experience of your brain saying, oh my God, this is so much pleasure, overwhelming. And then it sends all of these experiences back along that nerve pathway to your body.
And so anorgasmia is something that somebody needs to their difficulty or never having orgasm before, or inability rather to have orgasm. I guess never isn't fair to say because that could be for different reasons. But
That's right.
yeah, how common is this? Is there a lot of research behind this? And yeah, how many people does this affect?
Anorgasmia is pretty common. I think the research is somewhat limited, and for all sorts of reasons, right? Oftentimes we have more research on male bodies than we do on female bodies or certain ages or cultures. There's been some studies that show that, it could be anywhere between 6 to 30% of people. Now, that's a huge range. And I think that range reflects how much context and other kinds of social and biological factors can impact somebody orgasming. And so maybe that might actually be a really useful place to go is why do people experience anorgasmia?
Yeah. I think let's go there, right? Like because there's the physical, there's the psychological, there's the relational. Yeah,
That's right.
let's let's get into it.
Okay, I'm going to give you a laundry list here. When we think about biological factors, sometimes it could be medications, SSRIs, which some people can be on for medication, can be a really big contributing factors to anorgasmia. It could be from even hormonal contraceptives for some people, hormonal shifts in general, postpartum, perimenopause, menopause, all of these can impact orgasm for folks. Sometimes it's from pelvic floor dysfunction or even nerve damage, or it could be chronic illness, fatigue, pain, burnout. All of that can impact orgasm. There could be anxiety. Performance anxiety is huge. I work with so many folks around performance anxiety. That can happen, of course, for all bodies. Much of this can happen for all bodies. We think about anorgasmia for just women often, cis women, but every body can experience this. Um, Body image, self-criticism. If you're really focused on what you look like, it's very hard to be in your body and enjoying. Also, trauma, dissociation. If your body is not a safe or pleasant place to be, you're not actually going to be in your body. Shame can be disembodying. All sorts of things that have you be dysregulated. And if you're dysregulated, it's hard to orgasm because you need to have that parasympathetic part of your nervous system come online, which requires safety. So that brings us into some of the relational pieces. Lack of emotional safety is huge. I'm feeling a lot of impatience or pressure. I often say the hardest way to orgasm is to try. That can be self-imposed pressure, but also partner-imposed pressure. To me, if you don't have good communication, a lot of empathy, a lot of safety, that's not going to really work so well. And then there's a lot of cultural reasons, right? Sexual scripts that prioritize male orgasm and decenter women's pleasure can be huge. Social scripts that men should be able just to orgasm, right? On control, on demand, right? If you're turned on, your penis should be hard. And if you're not turned on, your penis shouldn't be hard. And you should be able to come, but not too soon, but also come when they say, please come for me, right? Like that's a very challenging dynamic to be in. Um, Lots of religious or cultural conditioning that pleasure is bad or is wrong can be very confusing. Gendered shame, not just gendered shame, shame for everybody around being too much or having too little desire.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes there could be sensory issues. I think this is particularly true for neurodivergent folks. Either too little sensory input or too much sensory input, or difficulty being embodied and noticing internal sensations. Or we work with a lot of folks with ADHD. Sometimes it's being able to stay present, to stay focused and connected to what's happening. All of those can be factors that can impact orgasm for a lot of people. And because these factors can change over time, somebody's orgasmic capacity can change over time.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so anorgasmia is not like you either are or you aren't. We can go through phases where that can be a challenge.
Yeah, and that's where I'm hearing like maybe there are some different types here of like there can be lifelong versus acquired or even situational versus generalized. And I think a common experience that I hear in anorgasmia is person can have orgasm with self right during masturbation, no problem. Partnered experiences, right? There's no way in hell. And so that's where it's like the situational point of it might come or another client that I had never experienced orgasm either self or with partner ever in her life, and had tried. I mean, really tried all the things, the creams, the doctors, right? Like all the hormone testing,
Mhm.
all of it, and it's still to this day as like I don't know. I can experience pleasure, but I never reach over that plateau.
Right. And I think one of the things that is challenging for folks who experience anorgasmia is they will get stuck in this cycle where they're trying really, really hard to orgasm, and then that creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more worried they are about, am I going to orgasm? And the more anxious they feel about it, the less likely they are to orgasm.
Mhm.
And so I think it's absolutely essential. And I have so many tips and tricks and things that I think folks should focus on. But the number one most important one is to reframe the goal from orgasm to pleasure.
Yeah.
And how much can you just focus on what you're feeling and how much you're enjoying it and how much what's feeling good in the moment to moment experience as it's unfolding.
Mm-hmm. And for partners that might be listening to this, what role could they play in reinforcing that to help to relieve that pressure of orgasm on somebody?
Yeah, I think there's so many well-intentioned and well-meaning partners out there who are like, I really want you to have this experience. Sometimes it's egoic. I'm going to be the one to get you to come. But
Hmm.
oftentimes it can be really generous of, I really want to help you have this experience. But that can really land as pressure for the other person because now they need to orgasm so you feel good, so you feel accomplished. And that is really not ideal. And so, can you just say, okay, great, I'm going to decenter pleasure is the goal. If you come, awesome. If you don't come, that's totally fine. Let's just see how much pleasure we can create for each other and for ourselves. And sometimes, actually, taking orgasm off the table could be really helpful. Whatever you do, don't come. You're not allowed to come.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's A, just really permission giving, but also B, it starts to invert some of those internal orientations people can have around I'm broken if I don't have this kind of
Mm-hmm.
experience to, oh, I get to just play with whatever else is possible.
Yeah, it's like Jedi mind trick is like,
Like
I
that's
don't
right.
I don't you're not allowed to do that. Um, yeah, I think as you were speaking that I was like that sounds hot to like play in that energy too. And yeah, way like pressure, like adding pressure does not sound hot. Um, but I want to go in a little bit deeper into the nervous system part of pressure or just regulation in general, like how much our nervous system impacts our ability to experience pleasure and or orgasm. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yes, if you are feeling anxious, hypervigilant, disassociated, then your body cannot access the parasympathetic, that rest and digest state that's necessary for orgasm. So for all bodies, pleasure is this balancing act between sympathetic and parasympathetic.
Hmm.
And so we need to be able to have kind of that experience of feeling safe and being able to surrender. And you cannot surrender if you don't feel safe, safe in your body or safe in the relationship. Your nervous system that protects you from harm is the same nervous system that opens you up to pleasure.
Mm.
And so if your body is focused on protecting yourself, it's not going to actually be available for pleasure. And sometimes it's not even just trauma or an unsafe relational dynamic. It's that when you get to that experience of intense pleasure, it is unrestrained, right? It is like you don't quite know how your face is contorting or what sounds are making or what it may look like or how it's moving through your body. And you get to this moment of what can feel like a loss of control. And for some people, that's terrifying.
Hmm.
It's really hard to just let go and surrender and to get the release that orgasm can be for so many of us.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. And what would you say are some ways that people can create more of that safety and that presence and sensitivity in their bodies to support that orgasmic potential?
Yes. Certainly mindful breathing, grounding. I'm a huge fan of mindful masturbation, which is this experience of, first of all, when most of us masturbate, we spend 99% of the time, if not 100, on our genitals. When we're having sex, hopefully good sex, there's all sorts of foreplay and touching of the full body and all this lead up and and ramping up to genital contact. So
Mm.
part of the importance of mindful masturbation is bringing in your whole body as an instrument of pleasure, exploring, touching, your arms and your legs and giving yourself self massage. And I really love scratching my head and kind of pulling my hair a little bit, just really allowing your body to wake up and to really be centered and present. And then when we're experiencing pleasure, there's all sorts of sources of erotic input, right? You could have cognitive sources like your fantasies or memories. You can have external sources like erotica and porn. And you can have a somatic source, which is the sensations that you're feeling in your body. And I think with mindful masturbation, the goal is to really focus on what feels good, move towards what feels good. I think of sex is the first way I ever learned how to meditate, is drawing my attention, my focal point is what's feeling good. And the more that I immerse in what's feeling good and where it's feeling good and how it's feeling good and how it's moving and transforming, and not where is it going, but just studying the pleasure, the
Hmm.
more pleasure that you're going to experience. And if you're really used to your fantasies or erotica, whatever it is, titrating between the two, watch your erotica, get yourself turned on, and then pause it and go back to the sensations that you're feeling in your body and really build that muscle.
Mm.
I think also other ways to create safety is emotional attunement and trust with your partner, creating an environment that feels cozy and private and sensory oriented, realizing that sensory-based pleasure, so something that has good lighting and smells and textures, will prime the brain for more sensual pleasure,
Mhm.
like massage and dancing and taking in a shower and washing your bodies with each other or by yourself, can also then prime the body for more sexual pleasure. I
Mhm.
think making sure that you feel a sense of agency, that your boundaries are clearly known and understood, maybe even doing a yes, no, maybe list when you're not in a sexual space might
Mhm.
help. So then
Mhm.
you're not bracing for things that you might not be a yes to. And of course, I think working with trauma-informed professionals is so important.
Mhm.
This is an area I love working with clients around, because I think there are the practical, but there's also really working with some of the deeper core material that can creep up and become an obstacle to pleasure of all kinds, not just
Mhm.
orgasm, of course.
Yeah. Do you have a take on so somebody that is trying to do work, let's say, in this area, and if it's hard because I'm trying not to put like go move away from like adding pressure to the orgasm, but so I'm just gonna ask it, and it might not come out the way I wanted, but we'll go with it. Would you say that it is better or best practice for someone that is working in this area to focus on the solo pleasure aspect of it versus partnered pleasure, or yeah, either or?
Yeah, I do think for a lot of folks, self-pleasure can feel a lot easier.
Hmm.
And you have less variables and less things to navigate. And so I'm highly encouraging folks to have a self-pleasure practice. And I like self-pleasure rather than masturbation, not because I think masturbation is a dirty word or anything, but because masturbation has this connotation of genital focus
Hmm.
versus self-pleasure, which is really just bringing in pleasure in all sorts of ways.
Hmm.
And helping folks explore, okay, like maybe I remember I was working with somebody who's like, I can only orgasm when I'm laying on my stomach in with my hand underneath me. And this was very frustrating for her. And I think it's so important to say, okay, well, first of all, this is actually really normal because a lot of kids learn how to masturbate this way.
Hmm.
But also, let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate that you have access to pleasure. Let's celebrate that you know a way of touching yourself rather than shaming yourself that this is quote unquote the only way.
Hmm.
And then, okay, well, let's explore all sorts of other ways that you can feel pleasure and decenter orgasm as a goal. And in this case, centering exploration as the
Hmm.
goal.
Hmm.
Um, and then like the sex toy industry, wow. I mean, this is a multi-billion dollar industry for a
Hmm.
reason. There's a lot of really smart people creating really excellent sex toys. It's also not very well regulated. So we can do a whole nother podcast on sex toy safety. But make sure you get some quality sex toys. And I highly encourage you to experiment with them. I personally am a huge fan of a clit sucker.
Hmm.
I wish I had those in my teens. They work much better for my body than vibrations do, but every body is different.
Hmm.
And normalize that. I also think for some people, orgasming in water can be really helpful and empowering. So underneath the bath faucet, using a shower head, whatever that may be. Hot tubs actually are really great with the jets. And so figuring out ways that work for you. But I do know some folks where they have a partner who they feel so incredibly safe with. And they actually can surrender more easily in those kinds of dynamics. So great, right? There's not one right way. And I think that's so important is to just normalize that different people are going to like different types of sensation, have different stimulation needs, different arousal patterns, want different pressures, rhythms, temperatures. And solo versus partner is another difference for
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious, like, what a timeline of healing or exploration might look like for someone that is experiencing anorgasmia.
I would say don't think about it from a timeline perspective
Mhm.
because that's a wonderful way to create a huge amount of pressure for
Mhm.
yourself and to feed that shame of I am not progressing in the way that this timeline I set for myself would be.
Mhm.
In fact, again, I'm working so hard with my clients to decenter orgasm as the goal. I say, okay, you want to experience more pleasure? Yes. Do you want to be able to receive and give more pleasure? Yes. Do you want to feel more empowered in your body? Yes. Do you want to feel like you have access to more exploration and understanding of what feels good to you? Yes. Great. That's where we're going to start. That's where we're going to put our energy and our focus.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that as well. It's like couples that would come into therapy or coaching and be like, all right, we're giving this 6 months, right? It's like already it's like, okay, you're coming with this pressure of the timeline and pressure of it's like the fix me mentality, and it's there is nothing wrong with you is really the reality of it. And so I think, yeah, I really like the focus here of focusing more on the pleasure, more on what is feeling good for you, taking the pressure of orgasm off the table. I know, right, for people they're coming in probably with that goal of like, I want to orgasm, or I want to orgasm with a partner, or yeah, would you say for many, for many that you're working with, do you see that it's been more lifelong, or do you see that it's been more situational in the people that you're working with?
Both. I mean, I've worked with a lot of folks, particularly AFABs, women, people who are assigned female at birth, um, because I think, well, there's a lot of reasons, right? We don't really support or teach masturbation
Hmm.
for people with vulvas. And the reality is, I mean, I am cursed with very small hands. I can barely reach my G spot, like really, and not in a sustained way because it's like too much of a strain.
Hmm.
And in a lot of countries, you can legally have sex before you can legally buy a vibrator. Western countries, right? And so we're not actually creating the support for people with vulvas to explore their body and to understand what would feel good. And oftentimes it can be, women are sexualized so much in our society and culture, and there's so much pressure around how and when and where and why we experience pleasure. It's so often not about us, it's for other people. And that can be really problematic. So, yes. And then, of course, I teach this workshop called How to Eat Pussy Like a Champ. It's one of my more infamous workshops.
Hmm.
And so many people will come to that workshop and they say, well, I orgasm this way, but I want to learn how to orgasm these ways. Or, so sometimes those are also challenges that folks can have. But yes, I also do work with folks, particularly moms, women who are going through perimenopause, men who or people with penises who are aging and maybe they're not getting as much blood flow to their penis as they used to, or sometimes folks who have gone through a divorce and now they're having all this performance anxiety with new partners, or they were monogamous, they've opened up and now they have new partners and they're feeling performance anxiety around that. Those can all be more situational factors that I work with quite frequently.
Hmm. Yeah. And how might somebody know that it's time to seek out professional help in this area?
Oh, I love that you're asking this because especially when I'm working with people with penises who haven't had this issue but really get stuck in this performance anxiety, it could be, delayed ejaculation, but more often for me and the folks I'm working with, it's inability to get an erection or maintain an erection. um, is I wish they would come to me sooner,
Mhm.
because if you are in a dynamic where you are adding more shame and more self-doubt and more anxiety to the mix, those self-fulfilling prophecies are going to get more and more ingrained, and it's going to be more challenging to overcome. Not impossible, but more challenging.
Mhm.
So I would love to have folks come to me sooner, not because you're a problem to be fixed, but because I want to help you stop treating yourself like
Mhm.
a problem to be
Mhm.
fixed.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's medical, that's therapeutic, that's coaching, like any of these routes. Do you have an
That's right.
opinion on somebody seeking like medical, like a doctor testing before going the therapeutic or coaching route?
One thing that I will say is if you can experience an erection or an orgasm when you're self-pleasuring, it's not going to be medical.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a good differentiating factor. But yeah, medical providers, they can check your hormones, they can check nerve function, they can explore what medications you're on if that's having a role. I think that could be really helpful. Also, going to a pelvic floor physical therapist could be really helpful, particularly if you have a lot of muscular tension or numbness. But I don't think that those things, I think it's actually really useful for those things to happen in conjunction with working with a trauma-informed coach or therapist. Particularly, I have to say this is where intimacy coaching can be so helpful because there's so many practical skills and oftentimes just a lot more training around pleasure and how this all operates in a physiological and a social dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd love to do like a little lightning round of Q&A with you. Are you open to that?
Sure, bring it.
Okay, so my first one is, can you train your body to orgasm?
Yes.
Okay. What if I've never orgasmed in my 30s or 40s?
One opportunity. Like I think that I've worked with people, actually, I've worked with people who are in their 60s and 70s that have had their first orgasm.
Hmm.
People who are like, I'm having the best sex of my life. Yes. Oh, it's so inspiring and beautiful to get to be a part of those experiences for folks and to support that happening. So it doesn't matter how old you are. And I think really it's about expanding your capacity for pleasure. And that can happen for folks of any age in any life stage.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, there's no expiration date on our sex lives.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Is it normal to orgasm solo but not with a partner?
Super normal.
Hmm.
The context is a really important factor.
Hmm.
And I really like Emily Nagoski's work on pleasure and orgasm, and she has this dual control model where she talks about the brakes and the accelerators. And
Hmm.
sometimes when somebody is not experiencing a lot of turn on pleasure or orgasm, it could be too many brakes, things that inhibit your desire and pleasure, or too many or not enough accelerators, or sometimes both.
Hmm.
And sometimes the brakes can be some of those relational challenges or that pressure that you might feel or a certain shame that can come up, not feeling like you know how to talk to them about it or explore in ways that feels empowering, or your embarrassment around how your pleasure looks or what the ways are that, I mean, so many people, by the way, can orgasm with the help of a sex toy.
Hmm.
But then they're too afraid to bring that into their relational dynamic,
Hmm.
which is something I work with folks around a lot. Or they need a lot of clitoral stimulation and their partner isn't doing a lot of clitoral stimulation for them or in a way that would really work for them. There's less partner specific learning that's happening.
Hmm.
So that's incredibly common.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, my last one might be a doozy. What if my partner takes it personally when I don't orgasm?
This is really common,
Hmm.
right? Because folks of all genders are really invested in being sexually competent and appealing. But there is a gender dynamic here where people who are socialized female are taught that our biggest value is being sexually appealing and giving pleasure. And that if we aren't and gosh, oh, the role of porn. We haven't talked about this, but porn
Hmm.
sets such unrealistic expectations for what pleasure looks like and also what is required to have the kind of pleasure that we want. Orgasm for a lot of people can take a while to get there. And
Hmm.
average sex in the United States is not very long. I think it's under 10 minutes, right? So we're actually not creating the kind of conditions that are conducive for somebody having an orgasm.
Hmm.
Um, people who are socialized to be male are socialized to believe that they should be sexually competent, and their sense of masculinity is somewhat intertwined with how sexually competent they are.
Hmm.
So, we might feel like there's something wrong with us. We're not doing a good enough job. By the way, also, men are so worried about this if they're hetero, and not just hetero, but especially hetero men, that if I'm not erect or I'm not getting an erection, that somehow they're going to feel like I'm not turned on by them. There's a non-insignificant number of people of all bodies have what's called sexual non-concordance, where the experience and the turn on, the desire that you're feeling does not necessarily manifest in your physical responses in the way that we might think. You're turned on, but you don't have an erection. You're having a lot of pleasure, but you don't have an orgasm. Or the reverse can happen. You're wet, but you're not turned on. You're hard, but you're not turned on.
Hmm.
And that can be very confusing for people. But so, yes, to go back to your original question, sorry, I know this is lightning round and I went on a whole
This
tangent.
is great. This is
Yes,
great.
yes, partners can take it personally. And yes, this is something that I work with a lot of couples around, because the more personally you take it, it's not about them now getting to experience pleasure for themselves. It's about them trying to get to some goal for you because they care about how you feel.
Mhm.
And now they're more concerned about emotionally caretaking you than about getting to experience pleasure and what's happening inside their own bodies. And so really realizing how complex pleasure and orgasm is, how many factors are involved, can be super de-shamifying for both parties involved.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think it's really helpful to not take it so personally, that it's not that you're not hot enough or not good enough or not doing man or woman good enough, whatever that
Mhm.
may be. But it's just like, yeah, this is really complicated. And how can you not be a mind reader and not expect that what worked for everybody else, that narrative, oh, I've never had this problem before, I've been able to make all my other partners orgasm. It's such a terrible,
Mhm.
shame inducing protective coping strategy to put on
Yeah.
somebody else. Oh, it just really irks me. So yeah, okay, this person is different. How can you learn what this person likes?
Yeah. And yeah, do you support it's like less of leaning into finding out the reason why and shifting more into kind of what our whole conversation is like shifting more into focusing on the pleasure component of it?
I think it's both and. I
Okay.
think if I had to pick one, yes, let's focus on pleasure. Let's reframe the goal. Let me help you figure out how to be more in your body and how to explore and how to feel more empowered and creative and curious and all of that.
Hmm.
But if there are some of these physiological factors, like hormonal issues, yeah, let's address that.
Yeah.
Or if there's cultural and religious shame, like we might need to really unpack that.
Hmm.
If it's a relational issue, then yes, like that's actually going to point us to some tangential work that needs to happen around how do we increase safety and communication in a relationship, not in the bedroom, so it supports what's happening in the bedroom. So I really like to take this dual track approach.
Yeah, I would agree. At first, I thought you were going to answer one way, and then as you're speaking, I was like, yes, actually, this makes more sense to me. So thank you for that.
Yeah, happy to. Mhm.
Yeah. And as we're wrapping, what is a message that you would like for listeners, somebody that is maybe struggling with this or has a partner that's struggling with this? What would you want them to take away from this conversation?
You're not broken.
Hmm.
There's nothing wrong with you. If you can experience pleasure, no matter if it's orgasmic or not, then let's celebrate that.
Hmm.
Let's move towards what's feeling good. And to realize that it's okay to want something, but the more attached you are to it, the harder it's going to be. And to really prioritize emotional safety, exploration, sensory pleasure, release comparisons, and seek support. I would love to help you with this.
Yes. And that leads me into, are there resources, programs, offerings that you have that could support somebody on this journey?
Yes. So my website is TurnOn Love. Reach out to me for any kind of coaching support. My husband, who works with me, is also an intimacy coach and educator. And sometimes folks have a gender preference, and so it's really nice to know that you can work with both of us or either of us. That's totally available to you.
Mhm.
I have all sorts of courses and workshops that can be really helpful. One workshop I have on demand is called Cultivating Your Pleasure. And then another one that I have, sometimes I'm teaching live. I have it on demand, meaning you can rent it from home anytime. It's called Get Out of Your Head in Bed. I think that both of these are really good resources. And then I'm teaching a 2-month course that starts in January called Sexual and Emotional Intimacy Skills. And this course is so valuable because if you have issues around emotional safety, we talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about unpacking shame, exploring erotica, exploring fantasies, how to increase your capacity to give and receive, all sorts of skills for expanding your capacity for pleasure, how to reignite the spark in long-term relationships. Sometimes that's a challenge. And so there's just a wealth of knowledge in this course that I think would be incredibly useful for folks. It starts in January of 2026. I also teach it every year in January or offer it on demand if you can't join then. And tickets are currently on sale. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask me questions if you have them and jump on this opportunity to up level your intimacy and pleasure.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. We'll definitely share all of that in the show notes so it's easy for everyone to find. And yeah, as always, like you're such an excellent resource. You're so well versed in all of this. So thank you so much for continuing to be a guest on the show and bringing us all of your knowledge and also just being a safe place for people to come to talk about this stuff. I really appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you. It's so lovely to collaborate with you, and let's help improve pleasure for folks around
Mhm.
the world together for years to come. I'd love
Yes.
to work continue to collaborate this way.
More pleasure for all.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you loved it, be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And if you really fucking loved it, make sure to tag me on social media at the Rachel Main. I'll see you next week.